Right, we just heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa a few moments ago giving his Freedom Day address. Let's unpack what he said. I'm joined in studio by eNCA's political editor Vuyo Mvoko, as well as political analyst Karima Brown. She joins us via Skype. Thank you very much to both my guests for joining us. Perhaps, Karima, let me start with you. What did you make of the tone of the President's address?
It is very typically vintage Cyril Ramaphosa. A couple of things stood out for me. The president returned to his usual themes of social solidarity, human solidarity, calling on middle-class South Africans to put themselves in the shoes of poorer people, saying that we need social compacting to deal with the scourge of coronavirus, but also returning to the theme of the economy, Dudu. As you know, we've got 10 million South Africans already unemployed. This crisis is making our situation even more difficult. And the president reminding South Africans that the lockdown isn't the same for all South Africans, that many South Africans are in fact going hungry, and that we need to imagine a new economy and a new way of doing things to develop inclusive growth and a more equitable and a more just society, Dudu.
Speaking on newness, Vuyo, he said it will be time to invest in a new society, new consciousness and new economy. Is it as easy as that, given where South Africa has been? How would you characterize the democratic dispensation in the 26 years?
The shortest speech I think a president has ever delivered on Freedom Day. I do not remember in the past 26 years having or listening to a speech that short. And I suspect the president really wanted to do this time around was to focus the nation on what has brought us where we are and how best we can perhaps deal with it going forward. I mean, he started by evoking, and paying tribute to our forebears, the people who struggled very hard, for the freedom we are supposed to enjoy today. But of course reflected on the problems that we have had, the reason we haven't been able to realize that dream, the reason this dream continues to be deferred. And that acknowledgement came through. And I think it's up to the rest of us now to say, if we ever, and God forbid, if we ever find ourselves in a situation that this virus has gotten us now, we should never really be found wanting, as has been the case on a number of fronts. Because, truth be told, the issues that the president flagged are issues that have been with us. We have failed ourselves in so many respects. Perhaps this is a time, or isn't it ironic that it has taken us a virus to actually make us realize that we actually haven't done the things we ought to have put in place. Whether you're talking about poverty, whether you're talking about whether or how well we are able to cope with this pandemic, a lot of fingers point at us.
Karima, we haven't done as much as we could have to avoid where we are today and this pandemic bringing it to light. There's a widely held view that, now we've got money for this. We've always had money to build houses, or we've always had money to give water and sanitation to people. Are we condemning, or is that a reasonable condemnation of the democratic dispensation?
Dudu, I think what this pandemic allows us to do is to reflect on the policy choices that the governing party, who's been in control of South Africa since the democratic dispensation 26 years ago, have made. And those choices haven't always led to the issue around building a more just, more inclusive South Africa. So I think it is a fair assessment to say that we need to look at whether or not our economic policy choices, our social policy choices have given us a country that we can be proud of. And if one is honest about looking back at the 26 years, we have come a long way, but there is in fact a lot more that we can do and that we must do differently. This disease focuses our minds to do, and the president did hint at that. He said it allows us the opportunity to reimagine a new South Africa. And I would urge South Africa's economic planners and ministers and business and labor and society to look look at policies that deals with the most vulnerable in our society, that deals with the unemployed, that begins to redefine the way in which we look at labor. A lot of women who work in the home, in the economy, their labor isn't calculated. And we need to have a different set of lenses to look at this economy, to bring about the kind of prosperity that will give political freedom real meaning in substance and in form. And I think that is the key issue here. We need to be bold enough to imagine a South Africa in which people do not have to go hungry, where we do not have to import water tanks so that people can actually practice safe hygiene and protect themselves. So I think South Africa's leaders are at a point where they can actually make decisions that now benefit the whole of South Africa and not just its middle classes. And this is a pause button in many ways for us. We can, in fact, redesign what it is that we are doing. And this crisis has shown us that if there's political will, it can, in fact, be done, Dudu.
Political will. Let me come back to studio where our political editor, Vuyo Mvoko, is with me for a final thought. Ours is touted as the best constitution in the world, and the president noting it in his address. He's saying our constitution starts with we, the people, and has to be the defender of all those who live in this great country. Is our constitution representative of that? Does it speak to the needs of the majority and cater to the needs of the majority?
It does in so many ways. That's why I personally have a problem with the treatment of the land issue, for example. I don't think it's got to do with a piece of paper. It's about the will. We haven't had the will to do what our constitution still, in its current form, allows us to do. But taking the we the people further, the reason I'm reluctant, or I don't want to seem to be like bashing the government, because the fact of the matter is that it is us who have actually allowed the wrongs to continue, right?
When you say us, you say South Africans?
Yes, we South Africans, we the citizens of this country, we who have been voting election after election. Because it's us who have actually allowed the madness to continue. Our resources can be stretched a lot further, as we have actually seen starting to happen now. But the fact of the matter is that we have allowed our resources to go to like wrong hands or wrong pockets. We simply haven't cared enough. I mean, every state of the nation I've listened to over there says, or starts by saying, or somewhere in the middle, you will hear the president saying, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go still. Every speech has said that. But the fact of the matter is that we've been, betrayed. But we've also betrayed ourselves, because we haven't demanded, of those who have put in power that the best that they can actually give us. Because remember, to get, the president talks about crime, corruption. He speaks about a weakened state. How did we get there? We allowed that to happen. And the minute we all sat up and said, no more of this nonsense, and then things started to change. 9-10 years ago, you wouldn't have thought that we could have done the things we've been able to do in the so-called 9 wasted years. But we were able to do that because there came a point at which South Africans said, we can't have this. So what stops us from seizing the moment and saying, well, whether it's the virus that has actually brought us to that point, let's use the opportunity. We can never go back right now. Let's demand of those who are put in power the kind of focus, the attitude, the ethos, everything that those forebears that President Cyril Ramaphosa mentioned, fought for and died for.
And it will be interesting to see what this new consciousness is and thinking. Thank you very much to both my guests, eNCA political editor Vuyo Mvoko, as well as political analyst Karima Brown.